These are the most notorious gang leaders, reacting to life sentences.
First thing you said is, "I am no monster." To the contrary, Mr. Harris, you are a monster.
You had a 40 caliber handgun. And let me tell you, a 40 caliber, handgun is a man stopper. That's a big gun. You're very familiar with guns, Mr. Borton, and you picked one that certainly was able to finish the job and gun 3 men down in cold blood. And that's what you did. Cold-blooded murder.
Yeah, I'll see you all in hell, Louis, remember that. Every one of you, I'll see you in hell.
This is Caius Veiovis. He is about to be sentenced at Hampton Superior Court. Caius Veiovis, a high-ranking member of the Hells Angels outlaw motorcycle gang, along with other members of the Hells Angels, had brutally murdered 3 Pittsfield men in August 2011. Brace yourself as we delve into the chilling details surrounding this crime, and most importantly, find out what the judge's verdict will be. Caius Veiovis, born Roy Gutfinski Jr., emerged from the shadows of the criminal underworld in the late 1990s, with a reputation for ruthlessness and a penchant for violence. He quickly rose through the ranks of the local gang scene, becoming a feared and respected figure. Veiovis' troubled upbringing, surrounded by violence and crime, set the stage for his descent into darkness. As a young man, he found solace in the camaraderie of gang life, where he honed his skills and embraced a life of crime. But it wasn't long before Veiovis' criminal activities took a sinister turn. He became involved in a series of shocking crimes that would leave the community reeling. In August 2011, Veiovis, along with 2 other men, identified as Adam Lee Hall and David Shalo, kidnapped 3 Pittsfield men, David Glasser, Edward Frampton, and Robert Chadwell, and brutally murdered them. According to reports, one of the men, David Glasser, was to testify against Adam Lee Hall, who was also a high-ranking member of the Hells Angels. To stop him, he was brutally murdered, while the other 2, who were his roommates, were also murdered to eliminate any witnesses to Glasser's murder. All 3 victims were last seen in Glasser and Frampton apartment on August 28, 2011. Almost 2 weeks later, their dismembered bodies were discovered, buried in a trench in Beckett. The impact of Veiovis' participation in these murders extended far beyond the immediate victims. Families were torn apart, forever scarred by the loss of their loved ones. The community rallied together, seeking justice and demanding an end to the reign of terror. The pursuit of this dangerous criminal became a top priority, with investigators leaving no stone unturned in their quest to bring him to justice. Finally, after a lengthy and intense investigation, Veiovis was apprehended. The trial that followed was a spectacle, with the media covering every twist and turn of the proceedings. The courtroom was filled with tension as the prosecution presented their case, painting a vivid picture of Veiovis' crimes and the devastation they caused. The defense, faced with overwhelming evidence, tried to paint a different picture of Veiovis. They argued that he was a product of his environment, a victim of circumstance. They attempted to humanize him, to make the jury see him as more than a cold-blooded criminal with a weird appearance. However, the jury, faced with the weight of the evidence, had no choice but to find Veiovis guilty on multiple counts of murder and other charges.
You upon your oath say the defendant is guilty of murder in the first degree. So say you, Mr. Foreperson. Was this the verdict of the jury?
And then came the moment of truth. The judge, with a stern expression, delivered the sentence: 3 consecutive life terms. It was clear that Veiovis had no intention of ever changing his ways or seeking redemption. His reaction to the sentencing only solidified his reputation as a cold-blooded criminal, unrepentant and beyond redemption.
My hand was not in this, and I will not let this man sell me my own life at the price of my integrity. I'd rather spend the rest of my life in prison and be able to face myself in the mirror at the end of the day and make that kind of deal.
The impact of Veiovis' crimes on the community cannot be overstated. The scars left by his reign of terror will forever serve as a reminder of the darkness that can lurk within the human soul.
I'm gonna be brutally honest. I'm not saying I regret it, because my whole life shaped the person that I am today. But what I know for a fact, if I could have changed some things, I wouldn't be here where I'm now. Stay away from drugs, guns, alcohol, teenage pregnancy or sex.
This is George Gould Thomas. He is one of South Africa's most dangerous gang leaders. George Gould Thomas is a name that instills fear in the hearts of civilians and rival gang members. The name Gould means violence, and Thomas doesn't bear the name for fun. Other gang leaders might be orchestrating robberies or murders from their hideouts, but not Thomas. The fearsome gang leader orchestrated about 4 murders from inside the prison. Thomas faced more than 50 charges, including 7 murders, 3 attempted murders, unlawful possession of firearms and ammunition, racketeering, housebreaking with intent to rob, and robbery with aggravating circumstances, amidst other gang-related charges. He was sentenced to life imprisonment for each of the 7 murders he was charged with. Out of the 7 murders, Thomas personally pulled the trigger in 3 and planned the other 4 from his prison cell. However, he was not alone. 6 of his gang members were also sentenced to life imprisonment for their crimes. Some of these crimes were carried out under instruction from Thomas while he was in prison. The rest of the accused received sentences ranging from 12 to 25 years in prison. The arrests and conviction were part of the state's commitment to preventing organized crime and crushing gang activities. The state has been under the scourge of the 26s and 28s, 2 of the country's most vicious gangs. The trial began in 2010 and covered crimes the gangs committed between 1999 and 2010. The accused persons have more than 150 charges against them. Thomas wasn't feared for nothing. 12 people linked to the case, half of them state witnesses, have been murdered. It was not surprising then that the public gallery was cleared, leaving only journalists to allow terrified witnesses to testify. The witnesses, flanked by a bodyguard, told the court that the gangs have repeatedly tried to assassinate Curtis Esterhuizen, a gangster from the rival Clever Kids gang. It was after one of these shootings that Thomas was arrested. While he was in jail waiting to be sentenced, he made more than 30,000 calls, giving orders to kill lots of people, including witnesses. Following testimonies from witnesses and a superabundance of evidence, Thomas and his cohorts were sent to prison. During the whole trial process, Thomas showed no remorse. In fact, he bore what seemed to be a smile on his face. These are the Carpio brothers. They were both leaders in the Rockwood Street gang. Every parent's dream is to witness their child's growth and development and maybe even dance at their wedding. However, this wasn't to be for the parents of Kevin Oriana, an 18-year-old West Valley Occupational Center student who was stabbed multiple times in the head, neck, and torso by Anthony Carpio in late April 2013. Kevin was at the handball courts on the Cleveland High School campus in Reseda when Anthony Carpio and his brother Michael attacked him. Initially, Michael, who started the fight, was the only one involved. But then, just like in a scene from a movie, Anthony brought a knife to a fist fight, and before you can say Jack Robinson, Anthony has stabbed Kevin about 10 times. Seeing that their opponent was down, the brothers ran into a vehicle driven by Michelle Pineda and bolted. Witness testimonies showed that the fight started after they issued a gang challenge to Kevin, who wasn't a gang member. For her part in driving the gangsters, 21-year-old Michelle was sentenced to 2 years in county jail. 20-year-old Michael Carpio was charged with second-degree murder and sentenced to 15 years to life. In contrast, his 18-year-old knife-wielding brother was sentenced to 16 years to life on the same charges. Scott Marcus, the Los Angeles County Deputy District Attorney, read Kevin's family's emotional victim impact statement.
As a parent, we plan to dance at their wedding, celebrate a promotion, look forward to possible grandchildren. The last thought we would ever have is that we will have to plan their funeral.
If the 2 brothers were remorseful, they did a good job of hiding it, because as Judge Martin Herskovitz pronounced their sentence, they remained emotionless.
25-year-old Lee Rios was sentenced today to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Both defendants are alleged members of the Latin King Street Gang.
This is Lee Manuel Rios. He is convicted of first-degree murder in Massachusetts, United States. 24-year-old Lee Rios and his 20-year-old accomplice, Jonathan Guevara, a respected Latin King Street gang members, killed Kenneth Lopez, an 18-year-old, in March 2015. The teenager's body was found on Dwight Street in late March. Rios had a problem with Lopez and convinced the teenager that he would straighten things out. The court heard that Lopez and Rios shared a cab to the area where Lopez was killed. Assistant District Attorney Max Bennett informed the court that Rios fired 5 shots, but only 4 hit Lopez. 2 were in the head. Rios then collected Lopez's handgun from him. Rios was arrested when the police raided his apartment after obtaining a search warrant and murder warrant for him. While searching the apartment, the police covered 2 loaded guns, one of which belonged to Lopez. The police also discovered a digital scale, over 10 grams of cocaine, marijuana packed for sale, and packing materials. In addition to his murder charges, Rios also faces charges of possessing cocaine with the intention to distribute, improper storage of a high-capacity firearm with a minor, and possession of a high-capacity firearm.
We're extremely pleased with the verdict. I was guilty on all counts, and most importantly, on the murder charge, the jury came back on 2 theories of first-degree murder, which will most assuredly result in Mr. Rios's imprisonment for life without parole.
Neither Rios nor his gang members showed any remorse in court for murdering Lopez.
This is where you will end up, with your family and friends crying as you're let out of the courtroom to serve the rest of your life in prison.
This is Abel Gallegos. He is a leader in the Crenshaw Mafia Bloods gang. When 28-year-old Simone Duran identified Alonso Quintana in a police lineup as a suspect during an investigation for attempted murder, little did she know that she was signing her death warrant. In retaliation for identifying him, Quintana, in connection with fellow gang members, Abel Gallegos and Rene Rosales, lured her into a motel, kidnapped her, shot her multiple times, and killed her.
They miss her and they ask about her every day. They wake up in the middle of the night crying for her.
As if this brutality was not enough, Rosales and Gallegos proceeded to pour gasoline on her corpse and set it ablaze. Following investigations, the murderous trio was arrested and charged to court with more than 30 witnesses testifying and an overload of evidence. It didn't take long before the court reached a conclusion and sentenced them. Rene Francisco Rosales had been convicted of 6 charges, including tampering with a deceased human body, conspiracy to commit murder, being an accessory to a crime, and tampering with evidence. He was sentenced to more than 120 years in prison. Quintana, who the police identified as a chronic criminal, was sentenced to life imprisonment.
This was a horrific crime. I am struck by the casualness in which it was committed, the absolute disregard for human life. But I'm going to impose the maximum sentence just because you deserve it.
Abel Candy Gallegos was sentenced to life imprisonment without possibility of parole, plus an additional 163 years for second-degree kidnapping, retaliation against a witness, first-degree murder with intent and after deliberation, conspiracy to commit first-degree murder, tampering with evidence, tampering with a deceased human body, possession with intent to manufacture or circulate a controlled substance, among other charges. During their sentencing, the judge expressed shock at such brutality. Still, Abel and his cohorts showed no remorse.
We have people sobbing today. If there's any tears, they should be shed for Miss Duran. She didn't have a choice. Mr. Gallegos, this is the result. This is where you will end up, with your family and friends crying as you're let out of the courtroom to serve the rest of your life in prison.
This is Julius Webster. He's a ringleader in the Heartless Felon Street Gang, a full gallery inside the courtroom for Julius Webster's murder trial. Most of the people, friends, and family of Curtis Marks Jr., who was shot and killed on August 29, 2013. 28-year-old Webster is charged with aggravated murder and robbery in Mark's death, plus faces additional charges of kidnapping, theft, escape, and intimidation related to other crimes. The trial began with a jury view taking the 12 jurors and 2 alternates out to 2 of the crime scenes. This one, Fly High nightclub near 70th and Superior, is where prosecutors say Webster robbed and killed Marks.
He said, "I'm going to count to 3. He counted to 3. He shot him anyway.
Webster wanted to go along to the site, prompting unprecedented security measures. A dozen SWAT officers in an armored car guarding jurors, and Webster, who never left the vehicle. Inside the courtroom, more heightened security with sheriff's deputies in bulletproof vests, extra metal detectors, and a ban on cell phones. Prosecutors say Webster is one of the leaders of the Heartless Felons, a street gang with statewide ties, the defense saying otherwise.
He's not charged with being a gang member. He's not charged with anything other than what you had read to you by Mr. Filiatro. And those charges cannot be proven beyond a reasonable doubt.
Julius Webster was found guilty in the murder of Curtis Marks. After the verdict, County Prosecutor Tim McGinty revealed that at least 2 death threats against Judge Michael Astrab had been received. The investigation of those threats led to William Hammonds, a fellow member of the Heartless Felons gang. Hammonds currently serving a life sentence for murder. The judge refused to be intimidated by the gang members who threatened him and his family, and he sentenced Julius Webster to life in prison with the possibility of parole after 99 years. Before being sentenced, Curtis Mark's family had a chance to address the court and the man responsible for killing their loved one. The judge had some words for Webster, as well after handing down the sentence saying Webster needs to be removed from society.
And appears to be of the position that he, along with other members of the Heartless Felons, are above the law, or that the law for some reason does not apply to him or to them.
When asked if he wanted to talk, Webster simply said, "I'm fine." But if Webster was a leader of a gang, what happens to it now that he's off the streets?
Do not expect this young, violent gang to go away. That's what the founder of the Crips gang in Cleveland told me this evening. In fact, he believes it'll be business as usual.
When you have these children today, you're battling a local Al-Qaeda or ISIS. These children have nothing to lose and they're not afraid to die. That's why they do the type of things that they do.
There are children all over Northeast Ohio who are members of the Heartless Felons. A growing number of them are out on our streets. They're also in our prisons, and their credibility is determined by the level of crimes they commit. Twan Billings knows all of this firsthand.
With the membership that they got and the manpower that they got, they can reach you from inside and outside.
Billings has counseled Heartless Felons to try to get them out of the gang. That's after he turned his life around, spending 13 years as head of the Crips in Cleveland, with more than 250 gang members underneath him. When asked about Julius Webster, the head of the Heartless Felons who was sentenced to life in prison for murder, this is what he said.
I guarantee you 90% of the members don't even know who he is.
Billings said that the Heartless Felons, albeit powerful, have leaders in each neighborhood, and that the impact of Julius Webster is hardly noticeable.
It ain't like these children sit at TV and get the current events and care about what's going on, you know, what the courts or what the prosecutor or anybody else got to say. They're going to continue the business. The operation of the business is to continue fear.
Twan says the way to help curb the gang problem is to work with local leaders, parents, and police to develop innovative plans to reach at-risk kids.
I may have this facade that everybody thinks it is X per se, but behind this facade there's a whole different person.
This is Jahseh Onfroy. The rapper popularly known as XXXTentacion was killed during a robbery in Florida.
People don't want to fight no more, so that's even that's not a conversation no more. Because if I say anything to a nigga and they got a pistol on them and they fear me, they're gonna put a bullet in my brain right in there, fighting. No, I'm not looking for a fight, nor was I. I just did it because I had to sometimes.
On June 18, 2018, 20-year-old Onfroy was out shopping for a motorcycle with his step-uncle Leonard Kerr. Earlier that day, Onfroy withdrew about $50,000 from the bank to make his purchase. The young rapper was unaware he was being stalked by 4 men: Michael Boatwright, Trayvon Newsom, Dedrick Williams, and Robert Allen. Williams and Allen even followed Onfroy into a dealership to confirm that it was indeed the rapper. Then as he left the shop, Onfroy's car was intercepted by a black SUV. Armed with guns and faces covered with a mask, Boatwright and Newsom stepped out of the SUV and robbed Onfroy at gunpoint. A scuffle ensued and the two ended up fatally shooting the rapper before grabbing his bag of cash and fleeing. A passerby filmed the immediate aftermath of the attack and called 911. Another captured Onfroy's lifeless body in the driver's seat of his BMW. The tragic incident left the hip-hop industry in shock, with popular artists like Diplo and J. Cole paying tribute to the teenage sensation.
Jahseh was loved by his family and friends all over this world, and you guys murdered him and left a gaping hole in each person's heart.
Shortly afterwards, the 4 were arrested and charged with first-degree murder and armed robbery.
You are charged with 1 count of murder in the first degree.
However, Robert Allen took a plea deal in exchange for his testimony in the trial of the other 3, which began with the prosecution claiming that Onfroy's murder was pre-planned and efficient.
3561. So ask yourselves, has he more than enough time to formulate the premeditated intent and the design to kill someone and the killing?
Boatwright's lawyer suggested that Robert Allen, who was yet to testify against the three, would lie in court.
Robert Allen is the only person that you will hear from that puts Michael Boatwright at Riva Motorsports on June 18th, 2018. Let me be very clear. If Robert Allen testifies in this case, he will lie.
Then Williams' lawyer incredibly threw accusations at popular hip-hop artist Drake, arguing that the Grammy Award-winning rapper was to be blamed for Onfroy's death.
Before X died, he said, if anybody kills me, it's Drake. And do you think that for one moment, here today, days after the event, he's killed by two masked men, right? He came out on social media and said, guys, before he dies, if anybody kills me, it's Drake. Do you think in that time span that they went and they addressed him, they talked to him? No. Do you think sitting here today, years later, any detective has ever asked, Drake or anybody like that? No.
He also accused Robert Allen of getting paid by Drake.
How much money in 2018 did you receive from either Drake or one of Drake's associates?
I never met Drake before.
You never met Drake?
No.
Do you know who he is, though, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Finally, Newsom's lawyer appeared last, stating that no physical evidence linked his client to the crime.
The evidence will not show that any firearm was ever recovered that could be matched or linked to Trayvon Newsom. The evidence will show no DNA whatsoever found on the body of Mr. Onfroy or on that car.
However, he was wrong. The prosecution presented a boatload of evidence in court, including CCTV footage from the crime scene. But it was three pieces of damning evidence that settled the case. First was the testimony of Onfroy's step-uncle, Leonard Kerr, who fled the scene of the shooting. He described what actually happened that day.
Taller guy, as I tell you, the taller guy went round to Jassie's side. The shorter one now come around to the door that I was, my door that I opened, and he go inside the car. And then I heard something like, "Hey! Hey!" How much time I don't know, but I heard something like explode.
Kerr also reenacted the moment Onfroy was shot.
You don't come out the effing car. And he was like with a gun. You don't come out the effing car. The shorter one was at Jassie's side.
The second crucial piece of evidence was pictures and videos captured the day of the shooting, showing the defendants posing and dancing with stolen money.
It shows Williams fanning $100 bills and surrounded by money. And this video taken at 12:35 a.m. This time Williams appears to be in a car, also fanning $100 bills, smiling and singing.
And finally, the testimony of Robert Allen ultimately sealed the deal.
As he grabbed the bag, shots are fired.
Who shoots the shots that are fired?
Michael Boatwright.
And who does he shoot?
Triple X.
Where does he shoot him from? What side of the car?
Driver.
Allen claimed that Newsom grabbed the bag of money. Boatwright shot Onfroy, and Williams was the getaway driver as he sat in the car. Unsurprisingly, the trio were convicted of all charges and sentenced to life in prison without parole. Michael Boatwright received an additional life sentence plus 30 years, as he was the one who pulled the trigger on Onfroy. As for Robert Allen, his plea deal meant a reduced sentence of 7 years in prison, plus 20 years probation for second-degree murder. This is Joseph Lancia. He was the president of the Hells Angels biker gang in Rhode Island. The 30-year-old Lancia is facing attempted murder charges after he fired a gun at a truck that was driven by Richard Starnino. Starnino, once considered a prospect for joining the Hells Angels, was engaged in an ongoing dispute with Lancia. Authorities said no one was injured in the incident, but the situation could have been far worse.
The bullet struck the passenger side of the vehicle. No one was injured. It should be noted that there were children in the area at that time, and there is a school across the street from the location of this shooting.
Astonishingly, Starnino not only survived, but he kept on driving and finished his deliveries. After the incident, a massive raid was conducted at the Hells Angels headquarters.
Anyone inside 161 Message Street? This is the state police. Come on with your hands up. Do it now.
Some gang members were arrested and taken into custody. Lancia, too, was arrested. However, as part of a plea agreement, the more severe charges of attempted murder were dropped. Instead, Lancia pleaded no contest to felony assault and battery.
30-year-old Joseph Lancia changed his plea from not guilty to no contest.
At his sentencing, several members of Hell's Angels came in full support for their president. Lancia was given a chance to speak, which he refused.
Is there anything that you would like to say, sir?
Nothing. However, Judge Kirsten Rogers had some words for Lancia.
Should you not appear in a timely manner, and I'm talking 5 minutes late, or if there are any violations of your release.
She also ordered him to stay away from the victim.
There is a no contact order for the protection of Richard Starnino for the duration of 8 years.
Eventually, it was time for Lancia to learn his fate.
A 5-year full sentence, all of which is to be served at the ACI.
Lancia was ultimately sentenced to 5 years in prison, plus 10 years of probation. While Joseph Lancia's victim lived to tell his tale. Keandra Duff wasn't that lucky. This is Tariq Jackson, who's on trial for murder in Michigan. Jackson was 16 when he allegedly pulled out a gun and opened fire after a fight broke out between two Ypsilanti gangs in 2015. The bullet hit 20-year-old Keandra Duff in the head, instantly killing him. Jackson, now 18, was facing multiple charges, including open murder. He was set to go to trial, but eventually pled guilty to second-degree murder. Things got emotional at his sentencing when the victim's mother directly addressed Jackson.
Our whole world was turned upside down from that point.
She said his actions had changed her life forever.
You changed our lives forever. You took it upon yourself to end my son's life.
But shockingly, she forgave her son's killer and showed sympathy towards him, addressing him as a young man who had dreams.
Well, he forgives you. And I forgive you. I don't hate you. And then they sent me a picture of Mr. Jackson. And when I looked at him, I said, Lord Jesus, this is somebody's baby. This is a young man who had dreams to be more than what he became. And if anything, Father God, in the name of Jesus.
She then asked for Jackson's mother and had some words of comfort for her.
Is Tariq's mother in here? Mom, come here. Your son is still going to be a great man. All he has to do is give it to the Lord.
Then in a heartfelt moment, the two mothers shared a hug in the courtroom. Jackson was also given a chance to address the court, where he apologized to the victim's family.
First off, I just want to say sorry to the family of the victim. I wish the situation would have played out like that. I never thought that my choices and decisions would have affected so many people. No mother deserves to bury her son, and no mother deserves to see her son change.
He said he got involved in gang activities when was young and took full responsibility for his crimes.
I was 16 at the time of the incident. I was young, angry, full of pride, caught in the streets and in the middle of gangs and all type of other stuff. And I felt like, that was the best choice for me to make. But today I don't think that was the best choice. But I take the full responsibility for my actions and I'm ready to face the consequences.
He also warned other gang members to learn from his mistakes and change their ways.
The life that we were living, being in gangs and all that other stuff, it ain't worth 16 years or death. Because eventually you be put in a situation and there's severe consequences that come with that.
Then he ended his statement with some words of encouragement for his family.
My family, I just want to say, don't cry, this isn't a funeral. My life is far from over. They can lock my body, but they can't lock my mind. It's going to be a long tunnel I have to walk through, but I always stay focused at the light at the end.
Ultimately, Jackson was sentenced to 17 to 40 years in prison for the murder of Keandra Duff.
They were grown men. My brother was 15.
I don't know what am I gonna do without him.
You may think that joining a gang is going to help you get money or protection, but in the end, it will destroy you.
This is Yonaiki Martinez Estrella, who was facing murder charges in New York City.
I don't want to see another mother, never, to lose his son in the way I lose my son, Junior. I don't want to see nobody go through that.
On the night of June 20th, 2018, Jonaki, along with Manuel Rivera, Elvin Garcia, Jose Muniz, and Antonio Santiago, brutally stabbed and killed 15-year-old Lisandro Guzman Feliz.
All of these men, and I say men, took part in one of the most disturbing murders that this city and this nation has ever seen.
All 5 were part of a vicious Dominican gang called the Trinitarios. According to reports, Lisandro had gone to meet a new friend a few blocks away from his apartment in the Bronx when 4 cars pulled up. Mistaking him for a rival gang member, the cars started chasing Lisandro, eventually cornering him to a nearby bodega. CCTV footage from inside the shop shows a desperate Lisandro seeking refuge and trying to hide behind a counter. But he was spotted by one of the gang members. A scuffle ensued, and Lisandro was dragged out of the bodega.
I remember his face. He was so scared, and I tried to hold it down, and he jumped up. The other people that coming for him, they saw him, he was already there.
What happened next shocked the entire city of New York. Armed with large knives and machetes, the 5 took turns, brutally stabbing the teenager. Then fled away in getaway cars. After the attack, a severely injured Lisandro managed to enter the shop, but was sent away. Outside and fading fast, he gestured towards onlookers to call 911. Then he started running towards St. Barnabas Hospital, which was just one blind walk away, before collapsing at the entrance. Passers-by desperately tried to save Lisandro. However, 2 police officers just stood by watching the scene. They were later investigated for failing to help. Just 20 minutes later, Lisandro passed away as a result of a fatal stab wound to his neck. Police soon got hold of the CCTV footage and arrested the 5 suspects, charging them with first-degree murder.
Police have arrested the 5 suspects accused in the murder of this teenager in the Bronx.
At their trial, a 6th member of the Trinitarios gang, Kevin Alvarez, testified against the 5 murderers.
Kevin Alvarez's arrest, he's testifying in court against 5 of his fellow alleged Trinitarios gang members.
Alvarez, who had helped drag Lisandro out of the bodega, identified the suspects in exchange for lesser time served for conspiracy charges. Eventually, the jury convicted the 5 gang members for the brutal murder of Lisandro Guzman Feliz. At their sentencing, the killers showed no signs of remorse. Instead, they waved gang signs and shouted gang slogans. Jonaki Estrella, who delivered the fatal blow, was sentenced to life without parole. Jose Muniz, Elvin Garcia, and Antonio Santiago each received 25 years to life, while Manuel Rivera was sentenced to 23 years to life in prison.
I'm still waiting for the divine justice. The divine justice has to come for them too.